When it comes to freedom in communities and social interaction, I have observed two general schools of thought: collectivism and individualism. The collectivist will often say someone should provide X service, prevent Y issue, protect Z resource. The individualist will often say, let me obtain X service, avoid Y issue, secure Z resource. Collectivists claim that it is right to demand action of others, whereas an individualist states that one's own ability to act is right. The collectivist mindset requires someone to have more power and ability. The collectivist mindset requires a human being to have more power or ability than one can ostensibly wield. A sort of emergent property is bestowed upon this entity. Though they claim that individual humans are incapable of the ability to decide for themselves, they state that somehow enough of these unworthy humans can come together and pick one who is worthy. Or they take that ability onto themselves and say that their decision, though unworthy to be made as an individual, can apply to a large number of people. The individualist mindset proposes that we are limited in our knowledge to a relatively small field of competence. This scope of influence can be defined as the things we have regularly and or studiously interacted with. When you expand from this base admission of human limitations, it would be inadvisable to expect any group of people, let alone a single person, to make decisions that concern a large number of people. The collectivist underestimates individual choices, whereas the individualist avoids overestimating decisions made by collectives. Theologies have deities that are able to make decisions for collectives and provide for the masses. It is an admission of natural limitations, human limitations, that this is considered to be a supernatural trait. A short sidebar here. There's a hypothesis I'm working on with statism, especially things like communism as a religion, where the person who holds that belief is a me-theist, beyond polytheism or monotheism. Now back to the topic, more on that on later videos. Statism and other collectivist secular religions do innately recognize the limitations of individual mortals. It is no surprise that communist leadership and other state elite in other forms of government take on aspects of deityhood once their power base solidifies, and that theologies, more traditional theologies such as Christianity and Judaism, serve as a vaccine of sorts to the growth of statism. I use those two Abrahamic religions considering the fact that they have a separation of church and state when you see them, whereas something like Islam actually brings the state into it, so the growth of Islam and the growth of the state go hand in hand somewhat in majority Muslim countries. This again may be something due to time, where when you look at older societies, when Christianity and Judaism were still in their younger years, they had a much closer relationship with the state and the growth there of the states. That being said, I don't really see where the Martin Luthers and other reformers are going to come out from when it comes to Islam. So, as somebody who identifies as an individualist, what of the saying that there is no I in team? The more someone recognizes their agency and grants it to and expects it of others, the better we will get along. Individuals often come together in pursuit of common goals. For example, the team pictured right now. Our goal was to win football games. The year this picture was taken, we won 7 times and lost as a team 3 times. This does not mean that there weren't hierarchies within the team. We are not all the same as the team. One example was losing a hard-fought game, and our coach during the post-game speech passionately asked for our forgiveness for not having done enough to help us win. I got up and said that we win as a team and we lose as one, just as he taught us. At the time I said that with the thoughts in my mind that I could have done more in the game, different plays that I feel I could have pushed harder on, maybe tried harder to get a tackle, run a bit harder to get an extra yard. So I thought personally I myself could also have done more to win. So I don't know who else shared that feeling, but I'm pretty sure other people did as well. Now since then, having grown older and having more knowledge about coaching, and things like just playing simple video games and trying to get the pixels on the screen to do what you have in your mind through sending electric signals to work on programs of ones and zeros can be enough of a challenge. Just that difficulty level alone is nothing compared to getting a group of hormonal teens who just happened to have parents that lived in a certain geographical area that decided to pick this extramural sport and come together and execute your best laid plans. So I could definitely now better relate to the frustration that my coach must have felt and have a better understanding of his role. He probably knew what I was talking about. He knew that some of us might not have tried that hard. But as a coach, he had accepted the role that it was his role to make us want to try that hard. As for the saying with the teams, I saw this one that said, there is trust in team, or without trust, there is no team. I think this is a much better saying than the no I in team. And how does one establish trust? Shared values and principles are as good a base as any. So, regardless, hierarchy in a unit exists. A car, for example, may be one machine, but there's tires, there's the engines, there's the doors, there's windows, the seats. So these collection of separate parts are not necessarily interchangeable, but they come together to make each individual vehicle. It's enough of a challenge to infer individual needs and requirements from inanimate objects. How about when it's a group of animate objects? For example, I'll go back to that picture of the football game, and then I'll use the crowd, the people who are in the stands. They all share the trait of being in the stands, but some were there because their children were playing. A few may have been there because they had a crush on a player. One could have been there to take this photograph. Many others were there to see us lose, whereas it was a home game, so most people were there to see us win. Some likely hadn't even planned to be there and just followed people they planned on being with who wanted to be at the game, and then they got to be in the stands due to wanting to be with somebody else. I'll continue to expand on these topics as I consider them to be foundational to understanding the world in general. On the term of understanding, I like to refer to the Symposium by Plato. In this book, Socrates and other men attend a symposium. They're talking about eros, which is love, and they sit together and they define the terms. They agree on the definitions of what they're saying. So to that end, I'm probably going to be making these short videos where I discuss a term that I think I will refer to often. So I'm going to start with reading the terms of individualism and collectivism after this. Probably have a separate video of that with just the nuggets, with just the definitions in and of itself. So if I mention it in other videos, I can post back to it. But you can stop here if you already know the terms, or you can listen. Going to start with reading the definition of individualism found in the Mises Wiki, which is ran by the Mises Institute. Individualism is a philosophical or moral position that is based on the belief that individuals should be free to determine their own ends and within limits act accordingly, rather than being coerced to act in accordance with the ends of other individuals or the supposed ends of a collective. This position is based on the fact that because individuals' scales of values will undoubtedly differ, and furthermore because no individual can conceive of but a small section of the desires of society. A complete scale of values or set of ends for a society or a collective towards which all should act would be impossible. Any set of ends for a collective, rather than being a true reflection of the desires of all, which is impossible due to the differences between individuals, would instead only be an arbitrary selection of certain ends by those in a position of power or influence. Friedrich Hayek states that the essence of individualism is this recognition of the individual as the ultimate judge of his ends, the belief that as far as possible his own views ought to govern his actions. While Ludwig von Mises has stated that individualism is a philosophy of social cooperation and the progressive intensification of the social nexus. Now on to the definition of collectivism, same source, Mises Wiki by the Mises Institute. Collectivism is a philosophical position and political doctrine which maintains that entities such as the state, society, or a nation have an autonomous existence apart from the individuals who compose it. Some extreme forms of collectivism even go as far as denying that individuals have an autonomous existence outside of the collective. A further characteristic of collectivism is the belief that the will or interest of the collective should come before the interests of individuals. Collectivism is a central characteristic of ideologies such as communism, socialism, and fascism, and can be seen as the antithesis of the philosophical position of individualism. So that's it for now. Thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Links in the low bar, of course, are going to go to the Mises Wiki and the original blog post that I wrote with this. And remember, some of these definitions will be included separately as separate videos because I'll be referring back to these issues. I think it's really good to get a hang of some of these definitions because they help to understand if we... Okay, there's this video that's going to be linked below about if we really do understand the difference between fantasy and reality. A good example can be seen when you look at the recent US presidential election, which had people fearing a result that puts the finger of somebody who is unqualified or impulsive on the nuclear button, which is nonsense. You know, it isn't some sort of snooze button where somebody can just wake up and hazily push. It's, there's a process to this, there's safeguards to this process. And interestingly enough, one side would often express the concern that Clinton was going to send us to war, and the other side that Trump was going to kill us all. So individualists were concerned with a negative collective decision, and collectivists were concerned with the ability of an individual to exercise his or her agency. So to that end, I'm going to leave a link that's going to include a video to Lindy Beige ranting about whether people do understand what fantasy is and what reality is. And I'm also skeptical of if a group decision is possible to be made. They say, oh, collectivists can make a decision. No, I think it's always individuals, and this may be biased as an individualist. But take it in this example. If you just went into any church service and you asked each of the worshippers to describe their faith, you would likely get a different definition from each worshipper of what the faith is. Yet, let's say this was a church, a Christian church, would they not still all identify as Christians? Would you not identify them as a group of Christians? I think you still would. So even though they think it's a collective, it's still individuals agreeing on, not even agreeing, because still different definitions. Anyway, that's it for now. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for listening. Bye.